Welcome back to the Sports News Analysis YouTube channel. My name is Mike. The Seattle Seahawks defeated the New Orleans Saints 23-15 today in the divisional round of the NFC Playoffs. Seattle will advance next week and host the NFC Championship game. This was a game with a lot of layers to it, but when it came down to it, Seattle won this game in very similar fashion to how they've been winning a lot of games this year on the strength of a running attack led by Marshawn Lynch and their defense. And you saw Seattle get out to a very good start in the first half, much like they did in Week 13 against the Saints. Seattle up 13-0 fairly quickly. They would go into the locker room up 16-0 at halftime. And for the Saints in the first half, they failed to get into a rhythm offensively. Okay, they turned the ball over on a Mark Ingram fumble, which was cashed in for a touchdown by the Seahawks, the only touchdown they did score in the first half. And, they went with a run-heavy strategy in the first half, did the Saints on offense. Drew Brees really couldn't get into a rhythm. Then we see, the Saints come out in the second half, looking to pass the ball, certainly more. They get on a drive at the end of the third quarter into the beginning of the fourth quarter, which ends with a Kyrie Robinson 1-yard touchdown run, followed up by a Mark Ingram 2-point conversion. So now the score stands at 16-8 near the beginning of the fourth quarter. These teams would exchange punts, all right? And with 5:31 left, you now had the New Orleans Saints, okay, in business here, all right, against that Seattle defense. Drew Brees, completing passes on this drive, moving the ball down the field very well. He eventually hits, Robert Meacham. At the time, you thought maybe a big momentum shift here because the Saints defense came out and had been playing well in the second half up to this point. You get the Saints catching a break on a Drew Brees 52-yard pass to Robert Meacham, a pass that tipped off the fingertips of Earl Thomas, who played wonderfully in this game overall. Earl Thomas tipped ball into the hands of Meacham, now down at about the 30-yard line for the Saints. And from there, just a really troublesome play calling and execution. Within that, that next set of plays there, you had a delay of game by the Saints. You had a timeout called by the Saints in lieu of getting another delay of game, which would have happened if they didn't get the timeout in. You had questionable play calls, I thought, where they were trying to force these screen passes the entire game. And they tried to force one to Darren Sproles on third down, okay, did not execute it. And now they were faced with a 4th and 15. And on a 4th and 15 from the 30-yard line, Sean Payton decides to kick a field goal, all right, rather than to go for it on 4th and 15 with about 4 minutes left. And he's going to get a lot of criticism for that, only because Shane Graham had missed a field goal earlier in the game, and Shane Graham is now kicking into the wind and the rain in the fourth quarter. So, I can understand people giving Sean Payton grief for that. Had the conditions been perfect, had Shane Graham, hit a couple field goals earlier in the game, maybe people would feel different. But Payton, obviously feeling that the advantage was not with him on 4th and 15, tries to kick the field goal. All right. Shane Graham, in stride there, misses his second field goal of the game. Okay. Now Seattle takes that ball, drives it down the field on a 3rd and 3. When many thought the Seattle would just run the ball and sort of run the clock out or attempt to run the clock out, Russell Wilson drops back, hits Doug Baldwin with what was probably the biggest single offensive play of the game. He hits Doug Baldwin, with a pass to set up eventually a Marshawn Lynch touchdown run, which really sealed the game. That Lynch touchdown run, a 40-some-odd yard touchdown run to put Seattle up 23-8. Really sort of sealed things. And look, all Saints fans are going to go back, to some common themes of this game. To me, those themes were the delay of game situation the Saints had, the timeout to prevent a delay of game, the 2 holding penalties that really thwarted some big drives for the Saints, and most notably the play calling and the screens. I know the screens were a big part of the Saints' game plan here all season as an offense, but led by Bobby Wagner and those safeties for the Seahawks, they did a great job on those screen passes all game. And it was very troublesome to me at the biggest parts of the game. You're still trying to go to those screen passes. And of course, what Saints fans will remember are those missed field goals by Graham. Obviously, on that backdoor touchdown, if you will, that the Saints scored later in the game. If Graham was to hit those 2 field goals, obviously that drive has a different feeling towards it altogether. And, that's the game from a Saints standpoint. And from a Seahawks standpoint, look, their defense, they're just ferocious. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. They're all ball hawks. Very competitive in the pass defense department as far as deflecting passes. I already talked about how good they were against the screens. The Saints did rush for over 100 yards, but they came out looking to run the ball first and foremost. And I thought that wasn't a bad game plan because I really think that's the only way you're going to beat the Seahawks in Seattle is if you're able to push them around and run the ball consistently for the whole game. Saints were able to do it in spurts, but not enough. And just as a whole, I mean, this defense, every level gets after you, and it is true. They're truly a pleasure to watch at all positions. But if I'm the Seahawks, I'm happy I got the 140 yards out of Marshawn Lynch. Okay, obviously. I mean, he had a very good game. And, of course, that big run at the end to ice it. Okay, but I'm a little concerned about Russell Wilson. Not concerned from the standpoint that I don't think he'll play good next week, but this game, not his best game. All right, 9 for 18, 103 yards passing. I don't think that's going to get it done if they want to win a Super Bowl. And I know this might have been his worst game statistically for the season, and I don't expect him to play this bad in the future. But that's the only thing you leave this game with that is a little troublesome, is the fact that he was never really able to get in a rhythm. He did extend some plays with his legs at times when he needed to. But overall, not a good performance from Wilson. We'll see what he comes back with next week. And you guys know if you listen to this channel, I've loved Russell Wilson all year and his whole career. Just today, he didn't have a good game, and I think it really showed. But they get bailed out by Marshawn Lynch. They get bailed out by that defense. And again, just some perplexing decisions, play calls, and overall play by the Saints. And I think the Seahawks defense plays into that some. The crowd played into it some. And obviously the weather did as well. But nonetheless, the Seahawks survive and advance 23-15. They move on now to the NFC Championship game, a game which they'll host next Sunday at CenturyLink Field. So I'm sure all the fans are getting all lathered up for that game already. But the Hawks are one game away from the Super Bowl. Guys, let me know what you thought of this game. Hit me up in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter as well. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Previewing all the playoff games, recapping them all, do a lot of NFL draft stuff as well. So be sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.